Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to each of the witnesses. Thank you for being here. A number of federal courts have called to attention the government's use of protracted litigation to avoid disclosing embarrassing documents covered under FOIA. For example, in the Lois Lerner IRS scandal, where the IRS appears to have deliberately violated citizens' First Amendment rights in targeting them for persecution under the tax code. Independent groups sought FOIA-eligible documents from the IRS. As one federal court described the government's conduct, quote, "The government probably did something wrong in this case. I feel like the government is doing everything it possibly can to make this as complicated as it possibly can, to last as long as it possibly can, so that by the time there is a result, nobody is going to care except the plaintiffs. I question whether the Department of Justice is doing justice." That was a quote from 2016. The question I would ask the panel initially is does that kind of quote from a federal court, does that kind of conduct give you concern?
I don't want to comment about any particular case or remarks by a judge, but what I can tell you is that the work that my office does in encouraging compliance with the FOIA spans a broad spectrum of activities and best practices where our whole focus is on I want to say robust. I think Senator Leahy didn't like me using the term robust, but I can't help but say robust and vibrant enforcement of the Freedom of Information Act. And we've been talking today about the fact that we have over 800,000 requests processed by agencies this past fiscal year alone, which I think the numbers alone show you. We have thousands of FOIA professionals across the government who are working very diligently to process and handle those requests every single year. Just yesterday, we had our Sunshine Week event at DOJ where we honored the FOIA professionals from a range of agencies who had for their exceptional service in FOIA administration. So I think that the larger picture of FOIA is that you have very dedicated civil servants working hard to carry out the law who really believe in what they're doing. And certainly my job at OIP is to encourage compliance with the FOIA, and we're very proud of that mandate.
Ms. Sema?
So for a long time, I worked in the trenches in FOIA litigation, and I was one of those dedicated civil servants. But now I've had to switch gears in my capacity as director of OGIS. We're a non-exclusive alternative to litigation, so we try very hard to work with requesters and agencies to mediate disputes and try to come up with resolutions to prevent litigation. So it's, again, hard for me to also comment on a particular case, and we're not focused on litigation. We're focused on the administrative process that leads up to it and hopefully preventing litigation.
Mr. Powner?
Yeah, I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
Are you concerned about how the Department of Justice has litigated FOIA cases?
We haven't really looked at that in particular about how they've litigated the cases. You know, I think what's important is to get the right transparency on and that we're using the right exemptions and that folks are getting the right access. That's what we focused on our review. I think there's a big question on the backlogs, what's in there. But in terms of the litigation, we haven't looked at that specifically.
Ms. Puste, how has the Department of Justice's administration of and litigation over FOIA changed in the Trump administration compared to the Obama administration?
Well, the department is operating under the 2009 FOIA guidelines. So we have a very, I think, remarkable, consistent approach to the Freedom of Information Act. Several of the provisions from our 2009 FOIA guidelines were actually codified by the FOIA Improvement Act of 2016. Our work expands administrations and is focused on what we think are like the key areas of improving FOIA. making sure that you have efficient systems for processing requests, applying the presumption of openness, using IT to the maximum extent possible, encouraging proactive disclosures. We've talked about that a lot today. And then, of course, fundamentally improving timeliness and reducing backlogs. Those are the 5 subject matter areas that we've continued to work on since 2009. They remain unchanged.
So have there been any meaningful substantive changes or policy changes concerning FOIA under the Trump administration compared to the Obama administration, or is the approach to FOIA identical?
The approach to FOIA is the same, and our 2009 guidelines remain the same.
Okay, thank you.